respond to them, but that's about it. You don't have to memorize anything.
Was it from Lovejoy?
Yeah, kind of fall up the camera. There you go.
So over here, so because you may not be in the live necessarily unless you come in, I mean into the picture unless you come into it, right?
We are now live. And you know,
I sent you the Zoom link.
Brother Eddie, can you guys hear us? Wave your hand. Can you hear us now? I know that C, that's my wife. No, that's you.
No, that's my wife.
Hey. One of the C's.
That's Damari.
Who was that?
Damari, you can hear us? Oh.
Yes, that is Paige.
Paige Oda.
Yes, I saw it this morning. What up, Paige?
So you heard me, Mom said she can't see us. She said, hold on. This what it look like.
Oh, hi.
Oh, y'all can hear us? Hey.
What's going on, y'all? Y'all can hear us?
Hear us? We can hear you.
Like, you see us? Oh, then I don't know what's going on.
find out.
Did she click on the link or she tried to push it?
Hey y'all.
All right, y'all. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. We had some technical difficulties going on, so we had to delay our start time. But we're here. Everything's good, right? And we're ready to go. So I appreciate everybody for tuning in to the Youth Just Us Fishbowl discussion.
Okay,
Right.
you just us.
My name is Paris Smith. I'm a community organizer with Blue Hills Civic Association, and my co-facilitator here is Reagan. I'll let her introduce herself.
Good morning, y'all. I'm Reagan Bird, also community organizer.
We see you.
And the real reason that we're having this discussion right now is because the narrative that's being built around young people and justice in the state of Connecticut is a narrative that doesn't have our voice in it, right? And if we're gonna talk about young people, we need to have the actual perspective of the young people. So this is the purpose of this discussion. We're gonna be asking everybody in here a couple of questions, and it's just gonna be a huge discussion. We're gonna chop it up, right? Anything you want to add?
That this is a platform for the youth. More importantly, we appreciate very kindly everybody that is out there listening to us. We hope that we can continue to do this and the audience grows every time. I hope y'all enjoy what we have to talk about.
Yeah, so we introduced ourselves. Now we're gonna go around the room and let everybody else introduce themselves. I don't know if I can see the beautiful people sitting in this scene right here.
In our studio.
We're gonna start right here. Tell me your name, your age, and what school you go to.
Michael Clark, 16, Aerospace High School.
Chambriel Battles, 15, MLC.
Betsy Lindsay, 17, Weaver High School.
Latoya Johns, I'm 16, I go to Enfield High School. My name is Kennedy Lillis, I'm 18 and I go to Civic Leadership High School.
I'm Carlos Ortiz, 14, Weaver High School.
Cool. So that's everybody on our end. Is it possible that we do the same over at HCTC? Maybe have everybody come up to the mic and introduce themselves one by one. Just tell me your name, your age, and what school you go to.
My name is Nishala. I'm 17 and I go to Buckley, I think.
My name is Deja Borns and I go to Capital and I'm 20.
My name is Damari. I'm 18 and I go to Windsor High.
My name is Angel. I'm 15 and I go to SMSA.
My name is Paige. I'm 15 and I go to Civic Leadership.
My name is Brianna. I'm 15 and I go to Achievement First.
That everybody? All right, cool. So let's just go ahead and dive into this discussion, right? So my first question I'm going to ask the group, right, is, why do young people do crime in the first place?
Their environment.
The surrounding.
Have the mic.
Yeah, speak up.
The people that they are around, they probably want to follow their footsteps.
Good.
Peer pressure.
Peer pressure.
Their environment.
Talk a little bit more about that environment, but
So what I mean by their environment is like they're a product of their environment. So everything that they see on a day-to-day basis, they're gonna follow.
To take care of their families. Saying the mic's so low, we need to speak up, all right?
if anybody over there on the HCTCN want to jump in, you know, by all means. The question on the floor is, why do people commit criminal activity? Anybody else want to add?
Can you read the question?
Why do people commit crime? Why do people commit criminal activity?
I'll say because people just like the people that are, well, Michael said, the environment and what people see other people doing this just because they want to be cool. So that's what I'll say.
So there's a saying that we like to say around here at BHCA, and the saying is, wherever you see the drama, you should look for the trauma. You know, what does that mean to people? What does that have you think about?
So what that means to me is basically, you know, you can't really basically judge a person based off of what they look like and stuff like that. You know, you have to know the person and know their story and where they're coming from. So, you know, if you see a problem, look to, you know, you have to, you know, see what they've been through and try and, you know, see the solution.
See what they've been through and see the solution, right?
Right.
Don't just look at them. Don't judge a book by its cover. Right?
Exactly.
Anybody else got anything they want to add?
I don't actually understand where they're coming from.
So it's important that we understand the root cause of why they're doing it in the first place. Okay. Anybody else want to add?
The reason why people go around,
Y'all gotta speak up. They can't hear us on YouTube.
I say the reason why people go around killing people, like the stuff they go through, because they see other people like what they have because they wish they had what they. I say that because they see other people what they have for what they have and like and be like just like that person, so they like, I'm gonna kill this person just because they have what they have. I don't have what they have.
There's always like a root cause to a problem. And if you don't look for the root cause, you can't fix the drama. So that's why I feel like
What is trauma? How do you define trauma?
trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Something that happens to you to like change your lifestyle. So that's what trauma is. Trauma can be anything, you know, like gun violence around poverty, stuff like that. So.
I'd say a form of trauma is like PTSD.
Talk more about that.
So PTSD stands for post-traumatic stress disorder. So, you know, it might be certain things that may trigger you to do things that you may not necessarily want to do or you may not have control over.
Something that you wasn't prepared to see or that you wasn't supposed to see and you don't know how to handle it.
How about folks over at HCTC? What do y'all think trauma is? How do y'all define that?
Okay, so hi, my name is Deja again. Trauma means like what he said about the PTSD. It's basically, it can be environmental, it could be emotional, it could be physical. Like it just depends on where you are and what type of lifestyle you grew up with. And just to say, we can't really hear you guys. You guys sound really low. So that's another thing too. Not just like we can't really hear y'all.
Okay, so suggestion is when you have a response, just come up and say it into the computer. So anybody else want to comment on what they believe trauma is? I heard Deja say something about environmental trauma. Can you become traumatized from an environment?
Yes, you can. They do it.
They don't understand it. I say trauma is also a person that can grow up without a father, doesn't not have someone in their life guide them in the right decision.
Okay, not having a father. Tell me more.
So like not having a father, you know, there's only so much that your mother can really do to lead you and try and teach you, right? But I feel like, you know, without that father role, there's not a lot of discipline that is needed to take
You
care
don't
of.
have to speak up here. Just come on up. They can't hear you. We're not going to waste nobody's time.
All right, so I said basically I feel like without a father, there's not a lot of discipline in the household.
There's not much structure people have to operate underneath without having that in there.
Or probably like deaths in the neighborhood. There's a lot, like they could get like traumatized by deaths in the neighborhood.
That's good. You got in terms of seeing them on the screen, are you watching them? Yeah, I like just say that. Who else got something?
What are some things that traumatize you?
Like social media,
Social media? How?
like what they see on the media, or even in person, like somebody they know that might have died, or
What else?
Also,
Police? How so?
they just always on you. Even for the smallest things when they do it.
So I mean, what type of effect does trauma actually have on you? You know, what type of action would you see people do when they're experiencing trauma?
Can you say that question again?
So the question is, if somebody's experiencing trauma, what might that person look like? What type of things might you see them doing?
failing school,
Failing school,
just being in the hallway, being in trouble.
getting a lot of disciplinary trouble,
Probably even
suicide. Yeah, that's a big one.
Can you have them like come up? We can't really hear them.
Yeah. So if you got an answer, just come up to the screen,
Can
stand
you
here and say it.
just bring that here? Just bring this here. Just bring this here.
You can put that closer. All right. Let me get some help right here. Put that table right there. Right there. Right there. Just change it up the equipment real quick. Let's take a look.
Bear with me, technical difficulties.
Y'all can hear us?
Y'all gonna have to come over here.
Back it up a little bit, that's all. Let's take a look. No, don't move it. Bong.
Do audio check.
All right, can you hear us?
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right, cool.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's
Lord.
loud and clear.
All right, nice. So the question was, when somebody's experiencing trauma, what type of actions may they be doing, right? What do they look like?
They might try and like, you know, act out as a sign, you know, to show that they need help because they might not be able to express it like verbally.
Y'all can hear me?
Yep.
Oh, they might be like acting out in school, or they might be doing things that they don't normally do, like acting out at home or being angry towards people, like they weird. They don't act normal. They show a lot of anger towards people.
What if they become the trauma? Like what traumatized them, they could like become it. So like for gun violence, they could start like being violent with guns and stuff like that.
Or you could
So I hear neglect. I hear they feel like that they can't trust anybody actually becoming the trauma, right? Do you think that there's enough resources in the community available to help people with their trauma?
No.
No. What type of things do you think should be implemented?
I feel like there are some. Y'all can hear me?
Yep.
I feel like there are a lot of resources. It's just that people don't take the chance to go out and actually do it. Most likely because either they're scared or just feel ashamed of what they're going through.
I agree with Kate, right? Because like there's this thing with mental health. Like there is a stigma saying that like if you get help, you're weak. Well, are you really weak if you go to a therapist? Like does that make you weak? I don't think that makes you weak. It makes you stronger because like you're getting help to build, to get more power to be who you are, you know.
So
I also, agree to what Trinity is saying, but at the same time, it's not as easy as it was done. So a lot of people might feel like you said, it makes them weaker, or even if they don't feel like it's making them feel weaker, they might not know how to. They don't know the order of the way to get the help that they need. You know what I'm saying? So we have to put out different options for them so that they can have, different people to talk to or different things to do to get their mind off of it or to help them. So, I feel like, yes, there are options, but there isn't enough.
So I got a follow-up question, right? And to kind of what both of y'all said. Is there a way that we can make the resources that are available in our community more attractable? Makes people actually want to go to them and get them without feeling that kind of stigma.
To get on their level, to like try to understand where they're at.
Okay.
More like their race and like that actually like try to relate what we're going through.
So I'm hearing more Black folks.
Right. Because a lot of times, like for therapists and stuff like that, it's not. There's more of the, I would say, Caucasian type of people that are therapists and stuff like that, and they can not everybody can relate to what we can relate or to what we've been through or what things we have done. So I feel like if we have people that are of our own color or our own kind, they can, relate in some type of way.
I agree, but at the same time, I disagree because there are Black therapists, but people aren't aware of them. So that goes back to the awareness of different types of opportunities that we do have. So there are Black therapists. I've been to several, but it's just that there aren't, enough advertisement for them. You only see the advertisement for what you said, Caucasian therapists.
And oh, hold on. And even like in school, there are like people you can talk to, but most people are like afraid. And most therapists, you need like parent consent and stuff like that. And most of people's trauma come from the house. It comes from home.
Good point. So let's talk about education. A fact I want to throw out there, right? A few years ago, Yale University, they actually did a study, right? And their study talks about the emotional quotient and the intelligence quotient. And the study says that if you can't raise the EQ high enough or how the person actually feels, it's difficult to raise the IQ. So, I mean, how good of a job do you think the schools that you attend address your emotional quotient?
I didn't.
I feel like it's kind of like non-existent. But if it is like existent, it's not a lot of them trying to make you feel comfortable. They just want you to, just say how it is, and then if they say, if you end up telling them how you feel about things, I feel like in a certain type of way they may try and judge you. So I feel like that's also brings like some type of controversy between like guidance counselors and stuff like that.
The schools don't help kids with their mental health. I feel like they just let it be.
Some schools are more focused on like test scores. And so like they don't try to figure out what's actually going on outside of the school, like inside their home. They just like want you to do good in school, but they're like test scores because that's how they get their money.
So more of a focus on the IQ and not so much the EQ.
Right.
Do you think this has something to do with criminal activity?
Yeah. Because right, so if you're in school and you don't have anybody to talk to, or you're just being ignored, and they're more focused on your IQ and stuff like that. I feel like a lot of kids that are in, those type of positions, they might feel like, well, these teachers don't really care about me, right? Or, I'm not getting the help that I need, so why should I even be at school? So it might lead to them not even coming to school and might doing other things outside of school that could, possibly end up in trouble.
Another thing adding to that, can y'all hear me first before I say anything? Okay. Another thing adding to that, a lot of these kids are focusing, on their emotional quotient, like we're talking about. Going home, having to live inside of that stigma, having to live inside of that, impoverished household, and having to go to school where teachers aren't trained to, adopt new methods for those kids who are actually going through those things. And so their first solution is to kick those kids out of that environment, that learning environment, when they need to stay inside of that environment and actually learn how to cope with their issues, because nobody really talks to them about it. Even in some schools, some cases they don't even offer the support systems that the students need in order to, develop as young adults. And yeah, that's basically it.
I think that's where we can also introduce the school to prison pipeline, where because these students' needs aren't being met emotionally, they tend to venture out into criminal activity where it doesn't necessarily solve their problems, but they think it would help in their impoverished homes.
They use weed as a solution for their mental health. So they act like there's nothing else to do. Let me just smoke and let me see if it feels good. And once they do it once, they're gonna keep on going.
They also lower expectations for the students in Hartford. So that's the problem too. Instead of like trying to reach us to like our full potential, they think we can't be anything. So they just give up on us instead of like actually trying. So A is not an A. Like,
An A here wouldn't be an A if this is like Avon.
Infield.
I agree with Trinity on that. And I was talking to Miss Banks just now about like you can be like in Avon and Enfield. I'm that one black girl in my whole entire class and everybody else is white. And so I was saying like, can my A be a different A from all those white kids that are in my class? Like, is my hard work that I'm putting in being judged like differently from how everybody else's hard work is being put in, because I'm black or I'm from like an area that nobody else is from. And I feel like with like mental health and trauma and stuff, teachers, I feel like the schools are like judgmental, and so they choose to help who they want to help and who they feel that actually needs it.
I just had a question. I was like, how do we know that certain schools that are in the suburbs get that same type of mental health day, or like being able to actually sit down with their students? Because I know some schools actually have that and some schools don't, or it's half and half. They do it and don't. But I'm just saying, because we're talking about stigma, but we're putting a stigma on Caucasian schools and saying that they have more resources, but we really don't know that, because of the simple fact that they could have less or they could have more. We don't really know because we're still here. At the end of the day, we're not going to the schools, we're not taking trips and stuff like that. Like they're doing to us, we're not doing to them. We're not taking trips to their schools, we're not going to their things that's going on. Like we don't really know what resources they have. We're just assuming that they have resources because of what we're told.
Well, I can probably like attest to that. I've been the product of both school systems. I moved around a lot as a kid. So I had went to Mansfield Middle School growing up, and that was maybe 5th through 7th grade. They had better lunches, and now that we're talking about guidance counselors, I can remember my guidance counselor was named Miss Lee and Miss Melody. And Miss Melody was everything that her name sounds like. Her room was majestic and oils and incense, and she made her room comfortable. She made sure that she checked on you throughout the day. I'm not even sure if my mom still remembers Miss Melody, but she made sure she called my mom. But stuff like that. When I came here, even throughout high school, there was one guidance counselor who was there every other day. And then even when it was about test scores and credits, you couldn't even talk to the guidance counselor about your credits. And then she doesn't give you that like therapeutic setting. The guidance counselor at my school didn't even have an office. She was sharing the conference room in the office. So that's kind of my personal experience.
I think this is where we can say it comes down to how effective these resources are, because if they aren't effective, who is it going to help? It may be effective in white schools where they are not underfunded, and in black schools where it's probably more underfunded than it is in the suburbs. How effective are these so-called resources going to be if these people who are being paid to give the resources are not being paid enough?
So I mean, just generally, like in the schools that you go to, like what is the overall quality of schools of the education?
It's
Trash.
I feel like actually never mind. Let me think about that.
Let me say something. Hold on. 'Cause my overall school, yeah, it's on. Y'all can hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Overall school, the environment for me, it's not great. I'm just gonna keep it 100 with y'all. It's not great at all, especially after everything that happened. It's a little low down there. It's kind of sad, and it's the people who's supposed to be helping are helping, the work not being done because how they feeling. The kids are sad and not getting the help they are needed, which is really what they need right now, and it's not happening. I just feel like they need to be more considerate about our feelings and about where we are. Like school is a place where we are supposed to escape from what's going on the outside, and it's not working. It's difficult being there. Yeah.
I totally agree, because I feel like these counselors are emotionally out of touch. They will say, "Oh, I can totally help you with so and so situation," but then I know a lot of kids don't like when their parents are called, because, like she said, it should be an escape for us. And what they tend to feel like helping in this situation would be is to call our parents. And instead of trying to counsel us as they should be doing, they're just giving very general advice. Like I said, emotionally out of touch.
I feel like some teachers sometimes think about themselves because just like how COVID's going on, I was out of school for a week, and when I came back, it was a week before midterms, and I had this English paper I had to write, and I also had to do the English midterm, and my work was gone. Like they couldn't find my work. They were like, "Oh, you have to rewrite everything, to rewrite a whole nother essay." And I was like, "Well, can I have time?" And he told me no, because he didn't want to grade a paper a day before it's supposed to go in. So I'm just like, y'all don't put any effort into, help us, especially. And I feel bad for the kids who are out during COVID too, because it's like their grades are done for that whole quarter. They're not getting any help. And then the teachers have the audacity to put on your report card or call your parents on some "she's not seeking help" or "he's not seeking help." And it's like, y'all not offering it. And even if y'all do, y'all give us half jobs with it. So
Family, I just want to say, so I hope y'all can hear me. We want to try to use the microphone as much, because on YouTube, I understand that they can't hear us. So we can use the microphone, see how I got it, right? Just like this, speak right into the mic, all right? Then that should work. Take some of that reverb off if we can. And I don't know if the folks who are on YouTube, if you could put in the chat whether or not you can hear us, that would really help us out. All right? Okay, let's give it a try.
So Toria said that, you know, the quality of education was already poor, and now it's even worse now that COVID's a thing. I mean, does everybody else attest to that?
Can you repeat that one more time?
Is your school quality even worse now that COVID is a thing?
Yes.
Yep. Why?
I mean, well, before I went to y'all can hear me?
Go ahead, son.
So before I went to Weaver High School, I went to Manchester High School, and there was counselors I could see like any second, any minute of the day. They had like money to get everything. But when I went to the Weaver, I noticed that they were just passing kids whether they knew what they were doing. They didn't have they had more money to make a varsity team. It was only JV, and certain people couldn't play, which like that could be bad for like people who want scholarships to go to go play for colleges and stuff like that. And it's like it takes like 3 months to go see a counselor instead of like oh, I need to go see somebody to talk to right now. They're always busy, and yeah.
So I mean, what are some recommendations that you guys would make in order to improve your school environment?
Victoria, I don't go to school in Hartford anymore. I go to school in Enfield, and the reason why I left Hartford is because of the resources. I felt like we didn't have enough resources. Like the books was like trashy, like ripped up and everything, and the lunch disgusting. So like I just had to go somewhere where people actually value my education. But I don't think people in Enfield really value my education. It's on me, So I just feel like we need more resources in here so we can keep our children in Hartford to build up like the resources and everything.
Something I would definitely recommend is that we be encouraged more, because I think a lot of these teachers like to say, oh, when you go to college, so and so, they aren't going to be on your back about anything. You're going to have to do it yourself. But why not give us the encouragement while we are in the environment that we are supposed to be getting encouragement?
But it's also like a grab and pull. We can't just blame the teachers and the education. It's like nowadays, a lot of our teens and children, we don't even try. We don't try to do the work. We don't try to complete the work. And we just blame the teachers and blame them because of, COVID and this and that. Like you actually have to try to do the work if you really want to like pass and do what you have to do. We can't just blame one story and make the story one-sided.
I also agree with that too, because at the end of the day, teachers can only give you so much to do, right? And can only help you so much. But you have to want it for yourself. You have to do the work for yourself. If you're not doing the work, how can they, figure out different ways to help you? See what I'm saying? So it's a give and take, like Paige said. You have to also give to take to get the positive result.
I want to move on to our next topic, right? So in the North Hartford Promise Zone, right? The average income per household is $12,000, just a little bit over $12,000, right? And the price of living in Connecticut for one adult without any kids, in order to have every one of his human needs met at the minimum, has to make at least $27,000. And note, our people in Hartford, we got children. So, do you think that has anything to do with the amount of criminal activity that happens here? Go ahead, Trey.
Since parents need like jobs and they're more focused on getting money to pay bills and stuff, I don't think they're emotionally there for their children because they had to focus on providing for them,
I feel like yes, because of the simple fact that when you don't get enough food in your system, it affects your brain. And then that causes environmental issues because you're looking for outside resources like fast money or jobs to support your siblings. And then you growing up faster than you're supposed to be can actually be a detriment to you, because you're taking care of your siblings when you're so and building that parent relationship other than being just a sibling. So that's affecting you, because then you don't know how to properly deal with your emotions, deal with your siblings' emotion and your parents stressing all the time. So that's a consistent baggage that you're carrying. And then you have high dropout rates. Then you have people that are lashing out at teachers and other people and being consistently angry. So then it's the education piece and the EQ and IQ, but at the same time, it's hard when your environment isn't very supportive.
And I always say that at some point in life, when you're going through all those things and you live in impoverished areas, the food on the table at home is going to be more important than the books in the classroom at some point. So if they don't already know how to cope with the emotions, and people are already going behind them, and nobody's going behind them and supporting them the way that they need to be supported, is going to eventually cause them, now they're dropping out of school, they're trying to focus on putting the food on the table, but they can't even put proper food on the table because they're not getting a real job, because they're not able to get one because they didn't even graduate high school. And so it's just an endless cycle that keeps going on, and now they're repeating that poverty cycle, that now we're on to generational poverty.
Yeah,
That's like an example of school things like
So another fact I want to throw out there, right? You know, I gave you the numbers before, but in the state of Connecticut, it costs about $750 a day to incarcerate a juvenile a day. And if you add that up, that equals out to $273,000 a year. Thoughts?
I think that is kind of counterintuitive, seeing that this money is needed in the state, because instead of implementing resources, they want to implement restrictions. How many underfunded schools could you give that money to better our education? How many families can you help? Like they said, poverty is the main cause of these experiences, right? And how many lives could you save, right? And that every human need is a human right, and when human needs aren't met, rights are being invalidated.
So if jail isn't the answer, what changes would you make in the neighborhood to solve this problem?
Like a safe place for like students to go
You gotta
to.
yell.
A safe place for students to go to and like express themselves, express how they feel, and to have that one person understand where they're coming from, and actually try to like help them out. You know, give them some motivation. Like, you know, I feel like everybody needs motivation in order to do something.
Solutions. What else you got?
Excuse me, can y'all speak up, please? The person who just went.
Give him the mic. Just say it again.
Talking to the mic.
You can hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, we can hear you.
A safer place for like students to go and express themselves, and for like people to actually understand where they're coming from and motivate them to do better, and just somebody to connect with.
Any other solutions? What about schools?
Can you repeat the question?
So what are some solutions, you know?
Mental health needs to be promoted more in schools.
Promote mental health more in schools.
We need more guidance counselors.
Or guidance counselors.
Who actually care about our mental health.
And not just doing it, just because they're getting paid for it.
Who are trustworthy.
Right. The opposition, right? They're proposing to open up jails. Get tougher on crime in the state of Connecticut, but some of the stuff they don't understand is what we're talking about here. So I mean, other than opening up jails to address people who clearly have trauma, what else do we do about it?
So jail is not the answer, because it's just a continuation outside of jail. So we have to like actually fix the problem that's going on in Hartford. So like education, or like giving resources to parents to actually take time with their children, you know, like just extra help.
I feel like, can I go or is somebody going? Okay. I feel like it's still a grab and pull. It's not, we can't just like say we need more of this, we need more of that. We need the kids to actually try. Nobody's trying, and we can't just sit here and blame a lot of people. Yeah, we have like faults in our education system, but most of those faults come from our actions.
But how many kids do you know that aren't trying? I, for one, I definitely put my education first so that I
You cut out Asia.
Is somebody going?
I feel like, yes, like we have kids that are like Asia who actually put their education first, right? And it's sad to say, but there's only so few that actually, want to, thrive and want their education and stuff like that. So I feel like if we have more people as a community that actually, try to push our youth to do better and give them different options so that we can, to get the best out of them, I feel like our school system will be a lot better because they will see, they're actually trying. So let's, make a bigger effort to try and help them out or trying to, try and see what's going on in our community and how we can fix it. Because, like they're saying, if we don't try, why should they? If that makes sense.
He's absolutely right. It's like here what I think it is. People don't like kids, the teenagers, they don't put education first. They put their lives and stuff first before they put education, which is like that's bad because like they be thinking like, oh, the GPA and GED or diploma that don't mean nothing. As long as I'm alive, I'm doing me. Like you get what I'm saying? I'm surviving, which is bad because you should live life. You shouldn't be taught to survive.
But also have to understand is not everybody has that type of chance that we may have, right? So a lot of times, where they might have to look at after the younger siblings, they might have to go out to do different odd jobs to get different types of money to bring into the household, right? Whereas we have different lifestyles and different support systems that can allow us to just live our life and to actually put our education first, right? They don't have the same opportunities that we have. So I feel like we have to make or give different opportunities or make different resources so that they can have a chance to, focus on their education or, not just focus on just surviving because yes, everybody's built to survive, right? But it's a difference between, being built to survive and surviving for long term, so they're just surviving just for short term. So, all right, how am I going to make this money today, right? I feel like the school system is obviously lower than what it should be, but I feel like if we actually try to push forward in our education and stuff like that, they're gonna obviously work themselves up to do different things too. So I feel like once we put forth the effort to survive long term, which is like our education and stuff like that, get our degree, get a good paying job that's paying consistent money, I feel like we can set ourselves up and they can help us set our lives up for the better. See what I'm saying? So that's just my little.
Yeah.
So my solution basically would be if it's not the teachers that are doing it, why aren't other students uplifting other students? Like peer-to-peer mentoring. You also, the community can have like days where we could talk about our mental health, like teens come together and talk about mental health. Like there's other things that we can do other than blame the system, which is absolutely true. Like we have some things that we need to dismantle and actually talk about, but why aren't we coming together as a community and actually building ourselves up instead of having other people try to do it that don't understand us? We keep saying the same thing. They don't understand where we're coming from, but we also have students that understand where we come from. So why don't we do the peer-to-peer mentoring, peer-to-peer evaluation, like just understanding where we're coming from?
And also adding on to that, some of the systemic things that we can change, addressing the lack of funding that results in limited academic offerings. That could be, AP classes that the kids take, but it could also be going towards that funding for the counselors so that they're trained to, adopt those methods that they need. And teachers also need to adopt new methods that meet the needs of the kids in the inner city underprivileged schools, because they're not. We're just hiring teachers to fill a position when we're not hiring teachers to, go in and actually figure out what's wrong with the kids, to actually teach the kids. We're literally sitting there and asking them to just preach at our kids for a little bit, even though they have all of these, mental instabilities wrong with them, and they're not able to focus in that class. Also, we could focus on the beautification of the community. You know what I'm saying? So the kids are not being a product of their environment.
I think this is also where representation comes in, because I definitely agree with, I don't know your name, but I definitely agree with what you said. The standard of living needs to be improved by ourselves as well. We definitely can't depend on others to do what we want the community to become. We need to focus on what we want it to become so that others can see that we are definitely trying to better ourselves and our standard of living, to then, for them to then do the same. I agree.
Yeah, I got enough time for one more response. Go ahead, Deja.
I didn't want to cut into somebody else, but I was saying, somebody said that instead of like putting our money into like prisons, we should put it into the police. We always talk about defunding the police and all that stuff, but we could actually use that money to have them trained in situations where like force and violence is unnecessary. And that's where understanding where you're coming into, like my brother said, people are coming in to fill positions and not understanding where they're going, and they always have a stigma of where they're going. So instead of having that position and the description, actually understand that these people are coming from traumatic experiences where people are dying every day, and they don't know how to fully cope with those emotions because of the simple fact that they aren't aware of certain accesses in like therapy and counseling and all that other stuff that we have in our community. Like there's a lot of positives, but we don't focus on that because we're so used to always being negative and always in the negative. Because I know a few organizations that actually help with resources, like HCTC, you have BHCA, you have a Mind's Journey, which they help with therapy and counseling, and they're all Black. Like there's a lot of people that are here in the community that are trying to push positives, but people are so focused on the negative.
So my main question to you is, what else do you think we need to add on? Like, what do you think we need to add on to so that we can, push forward and get more people to come in to help build our community up, or to get different resources?
Or make these resources normalized.
Right. Got a resource on the board.
So I think that's all the time we got. So I want everybody to clap it up for themselves, snap it up for themselves. Definitely a great discussion. I know we had some audio issues, but hopefully we're able to overcome those, and hopefully the discussion was good. But next, I'm gonna pass it over to my colleague, Ms. Banks, as she's gonna bring on the treat presentation that we have for everybody in the audience. So go ahead, Ms. Banks.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us again. We have Dr. Alice Sparrow, a great guest speaker. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Alice Sparrow. I just want to give you a little background. Dr. Alice Sparrow is a licensed clinical social worker who holds a Juris Doctorate and a Master's of Social Work degree from the University of Connecticut School of Law and Social Work, respectively. She is also a published author, licensed evangelist, and assistant pastor to the Springfield Church of God, prophecy and motivational speaker. She is the president and CEO of Olive Branch Clinical and Consultant Services, LLC. She provides an array of services, including counseling, clinical supervision, grant writing, executive coaching, speaking engagements, seminars, and training sessions on a variety of behavioral health and faith-related topics. Additionally, her consulting agency focuses on working with systems representatives, educators, community leaders, advocacy groups, and grassroots organizations to help them assess and plan for building and sustaining capacity within their respective communities. She is a member of the Department of Children and Families Region 4 Regional Advocacy Council and the chair of RAC's Permanency Committee. Welcome, Dr. Alice Sparrow. Hi.
Coming off. All right. Hello, everyone. Hello. What a delight it was to just sit and to listen to all of you share. Just a few updates to my the bio there. So I'm not currently connected from a chair or co-chair standpoint with DCF Regional 4, but doing a lot of work on a national as well as from an international training standpoint. But I literally sat here, listened to all of you, and it was bubbling up in terms of the research that's out there. You all have captured so much of what is being spoken about around the nation, about how inadequate sometimes the resources are, how there are in fact resources, but some folks do not know about it, how we need to think about whether we are using our own biases in our conversations, or whether we are taking a position that we have certain lived experience that we want to share to the world. And this is our reality. So I have about 10 minutes to talk about trauma and mental health and its impact. But I'm telling you all young people, you all have hit so many of the issues that we know is connected to trauma. And I'm going to share, if I can, if you can allow me to have the ability to share a screen, I'd like to do so. If not, I'll just speak. Am I able to share a screen? That would mean hosts, you would need to give me the capacity, if you can.
No problem, no problem.
Thanks. In the meantime, what I'm going to say is that when we think about trauma, and so many of you shared what you think it looks like, what you see, you talk about the disruption in school, the behavior acting out because the children or the individual just doesn't have the way to express themselves. You spoke about the poverty. You spoke about having to raise your siblings. You spoke about at times where parents are not able to be emotionally available because they're out trying to make the money in order to pay the bills, and so many different things, right? You've spoken about not being heard, not being seen, not being appreciated, not being valued. You've spoken about the quality of the education and what your experiences have been. Some have been positive, some not so positive, and some absolutely horrific, right? All of these tie into when we step back and think about what is trauma and how do individuals experience trauma. So from the aspect of just a definition that we can take from the Substance Abuse Mental Health Administration Services, it's about an event or set of events or series of events or set of circumstances that is experienced by an individual physically and emotionally as being harmful. But the additional piece is, it may not be. It may be threatening, so it may be experienced as threatening, and that it has a lasting adverse effects. Now, I want you to take a look at this, everyone. Young people, just so proud of you right now because of some of just what I've heard you sharing. It can affect you physically, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually. It can affect you socially. It can have a tremendous impact on the individual, the family, the community. So what I'm going to do is bring up a snapshot as I share, and let me see if I can do that now. And I see that I can. So I'm going to just give me a moment, and I'm going to put it in PowerPoint format. All right, I'm just bringing it back in so I can go back to my share. Give me a quick moment. And this is my sharing. All right, I'm going to share this screen. Everyone can see the screen? All right. Thank you. So what I just shared was this definition. Again, it can be one event, series of events, or a set of circumstances, right? And I've already touched on the dimensions, your physical, your emotional, your spiritual, your social. It can impact all or any of these dimensions of who we are in terms of our well-being. Now, when we think about the event, it could be direct and or just exposure. All of this is going to make sense when I bring up the snapshot of the community, everyone, for us to then have a conversation. The experience will be unique to the individual, the family, the community. So whatever our experiences are, even if we have the experience, whatever that traumatic event, we experienced it, right? A number of us experienced it. That experience is unique to that person because of so many different aspects, whether it's their chronological age, your developmental age, where you are, how the community responded to you, whether you had treatment, whether I had treatment early on. The experience itself is unique. The effect can be immediate, long or long-term. It can span a period of time. It can stay dormant for a bit. And then there's some triggers that may happen. And then we are experiencing it as if we're going through that same challenge or that same traumatic experience or event. Okay? I'm just letting down that we're thinking about the 3 E's, the event, the experience, the effect. In all of what you're doing, I'm also hearing that your interest is to increase your education around some of these things that's happening. So that's one aspect of what I'm doing right now, just coming alongside you. So now this particular slide, everyone, I'm going to deposit some things and it's going to mirror what many of you have already stated, which is just, it was just powerful again to hear share your knowledge, your life experience, so others can be informed, so that those who are making decisions or making policies can also understand it from your voice, right? So this I just called it is multi-systemic. When the top part I'm going to speak about in a moment, but I want you to imagine that what everyone have just said, that individual in the community, that family in the community, and the experiences that they might be having. So here goes. For some of our families, we know you, my children, our families, there's strengths, there's loving family, there's caring, there's diversity. You're gifted, you're resilient, intelligent, you're optimistic. You have a caring adult, you have a mentor, you have after-school program, you have the resources that some of you mentioned and would like to see happen across the communities. Some are experiencing this, some have this as part of their family of origin experience, right? So now let me look at some of the other things. These red pieces here, these red pieces are really telling you and me, hey, even though we have some of these strengths going on inside of our communities, inside of our family, there's some other stuff happening. And you young people have highlighted some of them. So I'm just going to touch on a few, but read it for yourself, right? See if you can take it in for a moment. We have the rejection, we have the loss and grief, we have domestic violence, we have the food insecurity. Some of you tapped into that beautifully when you said, when there's no food in your stomach, when you need to go and find a job or hustle here and there to get some money to be able to put food on the table for your sibling, right? The food insecurity, persistent poverty. One of you mentioned the fact that the way you put it was, if you don't know how to cope, dropping out of school, can't get real job, repeating poverty cycle generation. Generational pieces here around being impoverished. Looking at housing instability, some homeless, some on couches, some sleeping in the cars, some in motels. This is the reality of some of the youth that are in our schools and in our communities, right? Family incarceration, suicidal thoughts, ideas, plans, absolutely, sense of hopelessness, the abusive things, the emotional, physical, sexual, all of those horrific things that go on in family lives and in the community. So when we think about these reds and we think about trauma, right? We think about now what some have said. When you are in the school setting, you're thinking about survival, thinking about focusing in on your education may be very challenging. Some have said, based on what has happened, it's been so sad to go back and not being, it's in the research, but it's also mentioned here, not being able to experience even a welcoming back, rather, and not even with the COVID-19, not being able to get some accommodation and support when it comes to completing work after being out, right? This is very challenging. We're going to touch on what happens when trauma hits us and stresses overwhelm us momentarily, okay? Just want to touch on a few, everyone. Some of you spoke about the supportive family relations. Those green ones that I pop up there, those have to do with boundary setting. Some are restricted, some are loose, some are very appropriate boundary setting where you can say no, where you can say, hey, this is as far as you can go and no further. But then we have the relationships that are very, very difficult, very toxic, very much challenging, very harmful to our emotional, social, physical, and spiritual well-being. This is the reality. We have those good things going on. We have some of those not so good, horrific things going on in our individual homes, in our communities, across the systems that we're involved in, right? And so now I'm going to just show this piece, the yellow piece. I'm just putting now, remember, I spoke about the individual, right? Individual in the community, in the family. This is your individual. This is in the family. Now we're out within the community. Now we're out societal-wise. We have the discrimination. We have the biases. We have the racial ethnic disparities. We have the opportunity gap, right? You'll talk about the resource allocation. You talk about some schools have resources, some do not. Some have trained teachers and educators, some do not. We don't want to be stereotyping, but the research is telling us that there is disparity in the education system, okay? We look at the history of slavery and segregation. We look at inequities, all of these things. And that is affecting, from a trauma standpoint, our individual self and our communities, although some may say, no, it really doesn't. It really does have an impact. Policies being made in certain areas affect the family life, the family functioning capacity, the social, economic status, the things that you all spoke about. I'm just echoing what you shared because you lived it, you know it, you can highlight it, right? So everyone, here we are. We have COVID-19 going on, trauma, separation from family, loved ones. We have isolation. We have so much that had to do with the civil unrest, institutional racism, systemic oppression, inequalities, inequities, social biases, all those things, right? The shadow pandemic that you see there is what some of you already highlighted. You mentioned the fact that you are going into the school, seeing and trying to, this should be, as one said, a safer place for people to go, people who understand where you're coming from, right? But when we're thinking about the home life, there's been an increase in domestic violence associated with the pandemic period, right? And so let me just touch just briefly on the social determinants of health. Some of our social drivers, some of you already mentioned the poverty piece, the education, the poor quality piece, right? There's the lack of access to mental health resources, at least mental health resources that can really meet you where you are as a part of your particular race, ethnic group, or community geographic region, whatever that might be, right? Some of you highlighted that. You already talk about the food insecurity. That's connected to social drivers of health. So everyone, I'm gonna pause right there. Acknowledge the work that you did already this morning. Acknowledge how you have pretty much highlighted some great recommendations. And just to transition now, I'm gonna pause just for a quick moment. Everyone, remember, balance, right? And some of you mention it. We don't want to always focus in on the negatives. We want to highlight those positive things that's going on in our communities. We want to highlight that while this is going on, there have been some powerful individual, grassroots, non-traditional providers, system people, people who are in the schools, in the behavioral health world, in the court system, some good, real effective working people and people with empathy, compassion, love, and care that's doing great work. So we highlight that also. We highlight also that there are people such as yourself, young ones, and young adults, you here, and in other areas who are also coming together, who are also saying, I have a voice, I just don't have the platform, and that's what I need, platform. Some are saying, I neither have the voice nor the platform, and that's needed, right? And so let me just transition quickly to adverse childhood experiences. Everyone on the diagram I showed you a moment ago, I had adverse childhood experience on it. But I want to share just very briefly. Some of you may already know all about this. I just want to highlight for everyone that every family member, every community member, every system person, all together, we need to be able to address adverse childhood experiences. We need to be educated on it so we can help the young people that's before us, yes, you, but also your siblings and other members in the community, so that they don't have to go through these adverse childhood experiences, which we know negatively affect the individual as they progress in life and even brings about the early death. We know it. Some people may use these, others like in Philadelphia, they talk about housing insecurity, they talk about the neighborhood blight and poverty and foster care. There are other adverse childhood experiences that are being that conversations are bubbling up around. We understanding this, know that with this, when you look at this, this is what happens. So let me just talk very quickly on this. Young people, children, baby, born, they're developing. This is what we would expect to see happen. They're growing, they're learning, they're being nurtured, they're having bonding experiences. There's this give and take or serve and response where the caregiver is working with their child to develop them social, emotional, behaviorally, academically. All of this you would expect to happen, but it doesn't always happen that way, right? We know it. I know it. Growing up on Sterling Street in Hartford, Connecticut, I know it, right? Coming across and having to go across Albany Avenue, figuring out where I'm going to live, right? Some struggles, real struggles happen. Right here, if any of those adverse childhood experiences that I just mentioned and others, when that happens, it actually affects and disrupts the neurodevelopment of that child. So things are starting to shift now, right? Things are happening. All of the things that I showed you on that screen, except for the positive yellow ones, right? They can affect the development of the individual. So what we see then is the social, emotional, and cognitive impairment. We're no longer able to kind of regulate our emotions, kind of see the cues for what they are as non-threatening, with the ones that are non-threatening, and being able to see, hey, this is danger. We need to cue up. This is a threat. Mixing and not having that understanding of how to cope, right? As one of you all mentioned. We see it play out in the classroom setting. We see the acting out for many of the individuals, but then we see what happens with young people sometimes. We internalize. And so now we get that depression. We move from being down to weeks, and then we get to despair, and we get to deep, deep clinical depression. And then we have all of those suicidal ideation that may surface and pop up. But in addition to this, when trauma happens, and when we're in that space of where we're not able to regulate, and when we're thinking differently now, we start to adapt unhealthy risk. Right here, adaptation of health risk behaviors is simply saying where these behaviors help you to be healthy and cope and function, we begin to adapt unhealthy ones. So the risky behaviors, whether it has to do with starting to use drugs, starting to engage in sexual activities at a young age, starting to move into places like that will get us any misdemeanor fraction, anything that brings us into juvenile justice system. We're starting to adapt and move into those unhealthy the behaviors. Now, remember what I said. Down here, where we have this adverse childhood experiences, before that, I mentioned all those other supportive and protective things. But where this is absent or it's reduced and we're introduced with the trauma, this is what can occur and does based on the research. So then it's going to move quickly to disease, disability, and social problems. Some of you mention it, and you talk about the school to prison pipeline. Some of you mention the fact that when these things are not happening, I believe it was so clearly stated that you don't think you are cared for in the classroom setting. They're not caring about you. And so you may decide I don't need to be here. And you may decide not to continue with school. And then what was said? You end up doing the other kinds of behaviors. Those behaviors, as you were really making a mention of, is those risk behaviors that brings us into now disease, disability, social problems. And as you notice at the top, you can note the early death. Okay, everyone, I'm going to pause there to sink in. This is research out there, but you all know this because you all were just talking about it, right? All right, so let me just quickly jump to this one, being conscious of the time. I'm just going to focus in just quickly on a slide. When we have that trauma thing going on, when we have the event happen, or we're thinking about it, we have these stress release hormones. We have cortisols flooding our body. We have our response. And for some, we may go into flight, right? I got to get out of here. I'm getting out of here. I need to move out. I need to do something other than staying in this space. I can move out of this space. Or we may say fight, physical aggression, right? You may have the physical aggression going on. You may, go right for it. You may do something, actively be in that space, okay? So you have the fight and flight, probably very familiar to you all, right? But what I really want to pinpoint is this. This particular slide, it shows that we get our messages, visual cortex, right? Right here, your prefrontal cortex, that is where your executive functioning is happening. So your ability to be realistic, be logical, to analyze, to think clearly, to process, to figure out options, and then make the healthy decisions. That normally will happen without the flood of stress or without that impact of the trauma that we may experience. When we're under that stressful piece with all that other things that I showed on the diagram relating to trauma and things that's happening in our home, in our community, in society that affects us. Do you notice that there is an X right through that area that points from visual cortex to the prefrontal cortex? All right. Instead, it goes from message to motor cortex. It goes into reactive mode. There's no planning process. This is a movement. This is I am going to. And we shut down our capacity to really think through, to process what is the best strategy here. What do I need to do? What's the most healthiest decision I can make here? And this is happening constantly, right? And so at a time when young people are at the stage where they should be developing the capacity to make healthy decisions, developing their capacity to see and be optimistic about life, they're also experiencing all of the horrific things. And so that diminishes their hopefulness. I've heard in my counseling, young people mention, I don't think I'm going to live beyond 16. I don't think I'm going to be living beyond 20. My bro, my sis, my uncle, and they would tell the stories, right? But let me just jump back now because I want to tap on something else, everyone. And I'm going to move from that for a moment. Some of you mentioned the fact that there are individuals in the places that's supposed to be helping you. Many of them are helpful. Many of them are able to connect with you on a level that you need. But there are some who are not. Some of them, as you highlighted, just seem to don't care. And what this is, and I know being 30 years, almost 30, September, we make 30 years in the human service field. I have 8 children and 5 grandchildren. And I've been in the community, on the streets, on the block, in the neighborhood, behind the blocks, so to speak. So I'm coming from you, not just a book sense, but from being on the streets, right? When we have individuals who, as you mentioned, do not care, they're apathetic, they have apathy. Those are human agents. They're the ones working in the system that's supposed to provide the behavioral health, the education, the support services, all of those things. When you couple that with institutional and structural oppression, or these inequities, I'm not going to go through all of them, but laws and policies, things that you all as a group is trying to impact, when they are founded on in inequities and the practices and so on, what we see for young people and adults is they get disconnected, disengaged, fall into despair and depression, this poor quality of life, and early death. We see it, it's happening, okay? So what are we in this space? What is it that we need to be thinking about? We need to be able to think as young people, just as you said. Think about those peer-to-peer groups, right? Think about getting away to people that the resources are not being distributed, or there has to be a better way of getting the resources out. Making sure people hear your voice about funding training opportunities for law enforcement and other individuals who just don't know how to engage with you, with your families, and with your communities. Some of you are talking about it's that piece of it, you can't just blame, you have to be part of this. Individuals have to be able to say, I'm going to be taking on my education. At the same time, recognizing that there are some things in the way that's affecting that needs to be moved. And so to be able to come up with your recommendations, and hopefully I jot down a lot of them. More mental health in school, more guidance counselor, jails and prisons are not the solutions. Safer place for people to go to, for people who understand where you're coming from. Y'all were highlighting them, right? So let me just pause here, everyone, and get to this piece. We need to see individuals who are filled with empathy and knowing that when we think about culture, we think about cultural humility. So if we can talk more about what does it mean to engage with you youth, you. What does it mean? What does it look like to be able to talk about that? Let people hear what it means, right? When we and young people have talked about being and meeting people who are supportive and empathetic, when they have empathy, they say they're more engaged, they're more connected. There's a relationship, there's authenticity, there's sincerity here. There's a true partnership, and there's better quality of life. So with all of that said, I am going to stop here. And I'm going to say one aspect. One thing that I would recommend, there are 3 acronyms that I would use here. And then we can go from there, whatever you want, right? It's RAVE, right? RAVE. recognize our youth, affirm our youth, value our youth, and empower our youth. Rave about them. Youth, rave about other young people. Adults, rave about your young people. Rave about them to the education system, rave about them to the behavioral health system. Let them know that there's someone who cares about them. You recognize them, affirm them, value them, and empower them. Made that up a while back. When I was in law school, I had to learn a lot, so I use acronym a lot. I think God just gave me the ability to think about acronyms. You all were saying that. Y'all are not feeling, some of you are not feeling and experiencing that in your schools, and it would help, or in your other settings. The other thing is COME, C-O-M-E. Coordinate, organize, mobilize, and execute. Just what you're doing here, young people. Powerful. You come together, you coordinate, you organize, you mobilize across your community, and you execute your plans, right? Come into this. Some of you were talking about, let's talk about the positives. Talk about the positives. Who else is out there in the come reign? Coming together, organizing, mobilizing, and executing. And how can you work together? And the last one I'm going to say is revolt, R-E-V-O-L-T. Everyone, I'm a strong believer in this, right? Strong believer in this. When we think about revolt, think about you young people, you deciding I'm going to be resolved about learning all I can about my people, my culture, my environment, my community, because I need to be part of the solutions that will be generated to solve the problems in my community, right? At the same time, availing yourself to knowledge about other communities, about other ethnic, racial breakdown or background, if you will, so that you can inform your process of coming together, organizing, mobilizing, and executing. The E simply means this: engage. Although we're going through traumatic experiences, although we're going through a lot of difficult things out there, we want to continue engaging. Engage on all levels. Engage in community forums, community conversations, engage in conversations at your dinner table, engage in conversations through social media, engage to move the youth voice to a platform that is supernatural and powerful to be able to make things happen in our communities and across the state and across the nation, right? And then when we get to V, voice amplification, you're already doing that. Amplifying your voices as young people and bringing the voices of other young people who may not have the platform you have, right? The O is simply this: obstruct. Work together with one another to figure out healthy ways for obstructing laws, policies, practices, programs, and procedures that continue to negatively affect young people now and in the future, okay? And the L is leverage. Leverage your capacity as a youth. Leverage it to bring your innovation, your thoughts, your ideas, your creativity to the solution-focused discussions. Leverage it. Leverage your relationships. Leverage it. Bring it in. Leverage your community knowledge. Bring that to the table to inform policymakers and be at those tables, right? And then when we think of just looking at the revolt piece, and then I'll be ending with this, is T, be transparent. Be transparent. Someone started to say something and they said, in essence, they're going to keep it real. Be transparent and demand transparency from all of the systems that you have to interact with. Be open about what you're thinking, what you're feeling, what you're experiencing. Be in that space. But let me just encourage everyone, make sure that you have your sense of what it is that I need to do to have self-care going on, okay? Self-care, taking care of myself, whether it's my breathing technique, whether it's my praying, whether it's my journaling, whether it's I'm on the mic and I'm just gonna drop and spit, I'm gonna do this, whatever those things might be. And keep talking with one another, exploring different ways to get your voices heard, because this is the time right now. The pendulum can swing when it comes to juvenile justice systems. This is the time right now to have that revolt in your mind. All right, I'm finished there, Brother Lovejoy. Thank you, everybody, so much for listening. I appreciate having this opportunity to come to be with you all. You all are powerful. You're welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Farrell. Thank you, everybody. On behalf of the partners working for our youth justice, we want to thank Not Just Us, Center for Leadership and Justice, the Greater Hartford Interfaith Action Alliance, Connecticut Black and Brown Student Union, Hartford Communities That Care, and Community First Coalition. Please stay tuned for more actions in the near future and more voices from our youth, just us. Thank you. Be safe, everybody.